Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Hefferman. I'm the SIU writer for the Southern Illinoisan, and with me is Les Winkeler, the sports editor of the Southern, and we're here to talk about SIU's football game with Mississippi this weekend. SIU comes off a pretty convincing 38-10 win at Southeast Missouri State last weekend. They ran the ball pretty well. They passed it a little bit better, and defense was pretty impressive last week.
There are a lot of question marks about SIU going into the game, and I think several of them were answered. A lot of people were concerned about Paul McIntosh's ability to throw the ball downfield. At least for one game, he dispelled those fears. He made some really nice passes to John Lance, caught a really nice pass on the sideline. He threw a perfectly thrown ball to Michael Pruitt. And then the last touchdown was about a 60-yard in-the-air pass to Cam Fuller, right in stride, threw a nice tight spiral on a line for about 60 yards. And another concern about McIntosh was that he wouldn't check off all his receivers and just break for the run. But he only ran the ball one time in the entire second half. You really had to like the play of the offensive line and the defensive line. So. Overall, it was a very good opening day performance.
Yeah, and now the question is like how much different is it going to be this weekend? Well, it's going to be a lot different. It's I'm not saying one way or the other, but their Mississippi's line is significantly probably better than SEMO's, and they're expected to play in front of 60,000 people. The stadium it's 60,580, I believe. Now, but SIU has a lot of things going for them. Mississippi has lost their top two running backs. Their top running back has fractured his ankle. Brandon Bolden, who is a Doak Walker award candidate, is one of the best running backs in the country, and he was going to possibly will break all the records at Mississippi for rushing touchdowns and yards. Their backup is not supposed to practice this week. Doesn't mean he won't play, but they're talking about the third stringer possibly starting for them, and they have three quarterbacks. They suspended their starter for the first week. He is supposed to practice this week, but they're going to start Zach Stout at quarterback. And I think it'll be another big test for SIU's defensive line as well.
Yeah, I don't really know how much the Saluki defensive line was tested. They certainly performed very well, but this is going to be a much better test. I don't think this SIU team is going to be embarrassed. I think they showed enough last week to show that they'll compete. And actually, the defensive line and linebackers were so good, we really didn't see a lot of the secondary. I mean, I remember Mike McElroy having one big open field tackle, but other than that, the secondary wasn't really called on to make a lot of plays. So that will be interesting too. But yeah, you're right. The Mississippi offensive line, I'm sure, will do a little bit better job of creating some holes than SEMO's did. So it will be curious to see how the front seven responds.
I'm pretty confident SIU is going to be able to score some points, though, either in the field goal or I think they're going to be able to score some points on them. I think McIntosh gives them some problems, both as a running quarterback and he's tremendously accurate last weekend. Not just efficient, but he put the ball exactly where he wanted to put it. And their offensive line they have all five returning starters. Their size, you expect Mississippi to be so much bigger, but when you take SIU's 5 and Mississippi's 4, the average is the same. They both average about 6'4", 280 between the two of them. So SIU might be able to move them a little bit.
Yeah, and SIU has some good offensive weapons. Strother is really quick, and we talked about this during the game. The thing I like about Steve Strother is that he doesn't try to make a big play every time. If there are 3 yards there, he's going to get that 3 yards, put his shoulder down, and maybe get 4 or 5. He doesn't sit back there, juke around, and wait for something big to happen. He'll take the yardage that's presented to him. Jewel Hampton's a little bit different kind of runner. He's more of a straight-ahead type guy, and he's showed the ability to break some tackles. And Mukul Koloko looked good. He was in wrap-up time or mop-up time. So it's really hard to get a good gauge on that. But running back kicks, he looked pretty good too. So there's some weapons back there.
Well, SIU just wants to try to get to the fourth quarter. I mean, that's the game. They turned the ball over too much against Illinois to really have a chance there. But they turned it over against Marshall. The FBS games have really cost them possessions, and you can't give a short field when you're already the underdog. You have to make them earn it. And I think that's their only hope. But even if they're within 14, 20 points, I think it's going to be kind of a moral victory if you take those.
I don't know.
You believe in
I
this.
don't. Yeah, I don't know at this
I
point
do.
whether there are. I sort of do too, but at the same time, if you play well enough to win the game and you lose on turnovers, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I mean, you can, maybe a year down the road, you can look at it and say, yeah, we played those guys pretty good. But in the season itself, I'm not sure there is such a thing as a moral victory. But I think SIU is physical enough. I think they're big enough to play with them. I think they can compete. I'm certainly not going to predict a victory over an SEC school, but I think SIU can compete.
Yeah, and the other thing Mississippi has going for them is they're looking for a victory pretty badly. They lost 14-13 to BYU after leading 13-0 in that game, and they just lost to Jacksonville State in double overtime last year, which was a phenomenal football game, by the way. But they're going to get their attention. They're not going to sneak up on them, and Houston Nutt already said in his Monday press conference, you just have to watch the tape and know they're a good team. So we'll see what happens. Saturday kickoff is 5 p.m. They're supposed to announce a pay-per-view option for this area. The Illinois game is supposed to be blacked out in Illinois on the ESPN game plan, where you might hope you can buy it, but it may be available to some customers on a pay-per-view basis. Otherwise, you can listen on the Saluki Radio Network or follow along with our live scoreboard. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.